Good morning, everyone. State Controller of Israel, Judge Joseph Shapira, Director General of the State Controller's Office, Mr. Eli Merzel, and all the honored guests from institutions all over the world. I would like to thank the conference organizers for the opportunity to come and address you today. Most of you probably never heard of me, but I want to share with you that I never dreamed of being a parliament member, member of Knesset. As a young girl, I actually wanted to be a lawyer and to fix the world. As a law student, I became aware of the need for public legal services, and as a result, I established a nonprofit association to provide the need for public legal services. At the time, this association was a breath of fresh air to the legal world. It brought attention to the fact that legal counsel and representation in Israel were too frequently the privilege of a close-knit club, despite the fact that legal system is a public resource that should be available to all, not only to the privileged. My next step entering the world of legal clinics was easy and natural. It was at these clinics that I discovered the significance of legislation and its enforcement, and of course, the importance of state audit. One day at a meeting with a journalist from one of the country's most respected newspapers, I was asked what I wanted to do when I grew up. I answered I wanted to change the world. And then 2 years later, the same journalist, who's now the chairperson of my party, called me again. Remember you wanted to change the world? Come and be a Knesset member. That's how I was given the privilege of being elected as a representative. Never dreaming or intending to do so, I entered the fascinating world of politics and learned firsthand about the legislation, the other side, the one who passes the laws. This is my second term as a member of Knesset. Last June, I was elected to head the Knesset State Control Committee. This committee is responsible for examining the state controller's reports, requesting the state controller's intervention on investigation on issues not yet investigated, and of course, shedding light on otherwise dark areas of government work, ensuring that audit reports are not disregarded or brushed away. The committee conducts its work in cooperation with the state controller and his very professional staff. This cooperation, along with the combined efforts of the committee and the state controller's office, provides a genuine service to the public and grants the audit work its power. The state controller's report immediately sparked media attention, eliciting responses and reactions from numerous entities and government offices. However, as I discovered since beginning my term as chairperson of the committee, in the absence of oversight, monitoring, and enforcement, problems often remain unresolved, despite the audits and its conclusions. Thus, the function of the State Control Committee is twofold. First, it has a policing function, if you will, ensuring that important lessons and conclusions presented in the state audit reports on specific issues are studied and implemented, and reapproaching those who fail to do so. Second, the State Control Committee serves as a deterrent because affected institutions see that the reports are addressed and that those who are not making the necessary changes suffer the consequences. The committee enhances the standing of the state controller's reports and encourages audited institutions to repair failures and problems even without the committee's post-report scrutiny. As the committee's chairperson, I've gained in-depth knowledge of the work conducted by the state controller in Israel, and I gladly discovered that the audits focus on many levels and diverse areas of government. The state audit institution does not examine only the efficiency of government ministries and audited entities or the lawfulness of government actions. It likewise audits human rights issues that I hold dear. My LLM degree from the United States focused on human and civil rights, and their presence is still very much in my work. My drive stems from the desire to perform meaningful work for different groups in the Israeli society, groups whose voices are seldom heard and whose rights, more often than not, are disregarded. Therein lies the importance of the focus on human rights issues by the State Comptroller. Due to our hectic way of life, the rights of disadvantaged population tend to be overlooked and underrepresented in the public agenda. Fortunately, the State Comptroller Office, particularly the current Comptroller, often choose to highlight these very topics. The aim of every audit, even those dealing with misconduct or technical examination of the function of an organization, should be to improve life of the individual citizen. And no doubt, every such audit can change lives of many for the better. When the auditing institution chooses to examine civil and human rights issues, the chances of markedly improving of the lives of citizens are significantly higher. Not only because these issues are critical to everyday life, but because people will know that someone take care of them enough to examine issues relevant to their needs. I'm pleased to say that quite a few State Comptroller reports in Israel have specifically and directly addressed human rights issues, and for this, I congratulate the Comptroller's Office and his team. One good example is the State Comptroller report about housing crisis in Israel. In this report, human rights were addressed in two levels. First and most basic, the right for housing. The second, the Comptroller's decision to examine housing issue from the perspective of center versus periphery. And it dedicated a section of the report to affordable housing. Another is the audit report on the right to fair trial, specifically the report about the right for the economically disadvantaged to receive fair legal representation, a basic right in Israel. State audit can heighten society's awareness of human rights issues. In the fast and young-oriented world in which we live in, fundamental and ethic issues concerning disadvantaged population are often forgotten. As a result, audit institutions can play an important role in shedding light on such matters and ensuring that they receive the attention of government as they should. State auditing, in effect, forces us to stop, pay attention, and to deep and vital problems that we may overlook. Consequently, I ask you, as representatives of audit institutions, to address human rights issues. Bring these issues to the forefront and care for the individual. Be those who move your offices along the human rights path. Update the concept and perception of state auditing. Believe me, citizens will be more than happy to know that a branch of the government is aware of their concerns, monitor their treatment by the authorities, and will value its ability to protect their basic rights. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. The challenges we face are more difficult than those of preceding generations. This conference is about the Y generation, your primary client, so to speak, to which some of you may belong. Actually, I see it's all of you. Therefore, in addition to addressing the challenges relating human rights, I would like to address the challenges of Y generation that poses on auditing and their possible resolution. The Y generation lives in the moment. They never rest, moving from one thing to the next. Issues we consider relevant may not seem vital to them. Furthermore, the world becomes more and more inundated with information. We must learn to distinguish between important and the immaterial, in state auditing as well in other fields. Updating to both the new and rapid-paced generation and the enormous amount of accessible information is the only way to remain relevant. When information is abundant and available at record speed, it is much more difficult to conduct in-depth audits and ensure the response time necessary to audit entities. The reality, at least in Israel, is that quite often a great deal of time passes between the audit itself and its publication, a delay due to the vast amount of work involved, but nonetheless problematic in terms of public attention span. After a while, the issue may seem less relevant or perhaps even not relevant at all. Moreover, the audit individuals may no longer occupy same position, especially when we are talking about politicians. In addition, the State Controller report must be available to the public. Preliminary findings often find their way to the media before the report is officially published. Another challenge we face has to do with the trade-off between producing reports that provide thorough and detailed analysis on the one hand and making the findings accessible to the general public on the other. In Israel, state audit reports are comprehensive and elaborate, and as a result, not necessarily comprehensible and reader-friendly. At a time when people need easy, accessible information more than ever before, we must consider how to make the function of the state audit and the information it produces transparent and available to all. So, how can we make all possible? First, we must make sure it remains impartial and professional. Nowadays, when most information is delivered through the media outlets and the media itself is dependent on so many economic forces, it is not free from interest and politics. State audit must be impartial. Audit institutions to which we aim to read from any hint of politics must operate proactively to find clandestine areas of government activity and bring them to light. I believe that as time passes and technology advances, we will increasingly recognize the middling of media outlets with the information that provide for our consumption. We will want an objective, impartial point of view and seek it out, thereby increasing the clout of state audits. Second, I think we should consider making information and the way it's presented accessible and friendly to the wide generation. Make no mistake, I believe that it is imperative to maintain the thoroughness and comprehensiveness of the audit reports. There is a saying in Israel, especially at the parliament, if you want to learn something about an issue, read the State Controller report about it. Such reports are important and necessary. Nonetheless, perhaps we should think about presenting some of the information in a shorter graphic format. Should we be willing to trade volume of information for clarity of presentation suitable for the wide generation? This compromise might prove beneficial, as more citizens would be exposed to and read the reports. Needless to say, the reports would also appear in their present format, so that those who choose to investigate an issue will always be able to read the comprehensive reports. Third, and perhaps the most important, I think the key to remaining relevance is to focus on civil rights, as I tried to illustrate before. In addition, I believe that audit must be conducted at the micro and not only the micro level. For instance, we might choose to look into responses time of public call centers, examining how long it takes services providers to respond to inquiries and compare responses rates to the total amount of inquiries received. Ultimately, the ability to lodge complaints and make inquiries with the information about this process being made transparent. It's important because it proves that someone is looking out for the public needs. The special structure of the State Controller's Office in Israel, in which the Controller is also the Ombudsman, contributes to the satisfactory responses citizens receive to their inquiries and complaints. In summary, I would like to say that our hopes rest on your shoulders. You play an important role, wield considerable power, and as you know, with great power comes great responsibility. I am confident that you will find ways to address challenges with the wide generation, perhaps with the aid of cooperation and exchange ideas. I think that this conference, with all of you gathered here to join forces, makes for a compelling statement. If there is one message I've tried to get across from me to you, it is this. The state audit institution can and must be employed as a tool to advance human rights. This task is in your hands. This is a heavy responsibility and a very tricky one, since auditing can never be partial or partisan, despite the fact it addresses issues related values and morality. State auditing must remain natural and unbiased. It must deal with human rights without politicizing them. I'm confident that you will find a way to do this challenge. I know that each and every citizen in your respective countries will feel the difference in your actions will have made their lives much better, and will thank you for that. I want to thank you very much for listening, and I wish you a productive conference and a very pleasant stay in Israel.
Yes, the second Young EuroSAI Conference, Israel, November 2015. The Office of the State Comptroller and Ombudsman of Israel.